Welcome, YouTube. We are in the quarterfinals match and the last video here that we're going to be posting for the 1K Legacy event that was hosted by Face to Face Games Toronto during the Halloween weekend. So, in this quarterfinals match, we have Connors on Applejacks that we saw earlier, I think in video 2. I think it was round 2 that we saw him. And then on the other side, we have Ben playing Beanstalk Control. So we're going to see what's the better food group. We're going to go with apples, or is it beans? But yeah, I think so. Ben is playing the like a 5-color version. It's really 4-color, but we just have the added 5th color just to make things like prismatic ending and prismatic prismatic ending and leyline binding, just to make them just a teeny bit better. It's not like a drastic change or anything. I think we just play either the one of, like, you have a choice between the one of Xander's Lounge and the one of, I think Ben's opted to play Raffine's Tower. Usually I see the Xander's Lounge, but it seems like the white blue is what Ben values more. And it seems like he searches for taigas and volcanic islands a little bit more aggressively just to get the red source that you don't get from Xander's Lounge. But yeah. So both of these guys' deck lists will be in the description below. It is posted on MTG Top 8. This is a Top 8 match, so they're both definitely in there. I know Ben plays the Yorion version of this deck on Magic Online, but he says that there's a lot of it's pretty hard shuffling an 80 card deck in person, and he said he doesn't really need the 80 cards, so he's playing the 60 card version here today. So it is seeded, I believe. I think Ben is the lower seed. I think Connors might be in the higher seed, so I'm pretty sure Connors is playing first, but I'm not 100%. Because this is a top 8 match, the rounds are untimed, so this video might go a little bit longer. Just a forewarning for all of you wanting to watch this. Just be in for quite a long game, or a longer video than normal. I will do my best to cut out all of the shuffling because there is a lot of tutoring in the Applejacks deck. It is a green. I'm pretty sure it's a Green Suns deck. But it does play Night of the Reliquary, Crop Rotation, and stuff like that. So naturally, it will just be tutoring a lot. Ben on the other side will be fetching a lot, so there is going to be a lot of downtime shuffling here. So Connor's debating to keep this hand. He is pitching a Crop Rotation. Not the greatest against blue Force of Will decks, so probably a good choice to get rid of it. Unless you're trying to, early bait out a Force of Will. So Connor's going to start us off. He is the higher seed. He's going to play Windswept Heath and crack it, find a Savannah, and play a Sylvan Safekeeper. That card is a 1-mana 1/1. Sacrifice a land. Target creature gains Shroud until end of turn. Ben draws for his turn. I believe it was a basic island. Going to play a Flooded Strand. And I think he's just going to pass. He does. Connor's going to draw for turn. Ben does have the early Beanstalk. Nothing much that Naya colors can do about that. Gonna play a Dryad Arbor, swing in for 1, tie it up 19-19. Looks like he's passing the turn to Ben. Ben's gonna draw. Finds, I think it was an Uro? No, Source of Plowshare. Alright, but he does have an Uro in hand. There is also a Volcanic Island. Sorry, I'm just getting little tidbits of information every time we take a look. There is an early tropical island, so I think Ben will be trying to set up an early Uro, trying to get double blue, double green as fast as possible here in unison with the Beanstalk. There's Tundra for the land for turn, and down comes Beanstalk. Connors has nothing to do but let it resolve. Ben gonna draw off the Beanstalk when it enters the battlefield. Connor's holding a Beseju, but cannot cast it, as Beseju is 2 mana, and there's no legendary creatures or planeswalkers. Yeah, so Ben just reminding Connors that Dried Arbor does not have haste, cannot top it for mana, so it is a creature, it is affected by Summoning Sickness, even though it is a land. Connor's going to play a Windswept Heath for his land for turn. Going to crack the Windswept Heath, go down to 18, tap the Dryad Arbor, Savannah, and presumably a Taiga, just to get down a Knight of the Reliquary. So that is a Taiga. Down comes Force of Will from Ben, exiling the Uro. So I was wrong. Not setting up an early Uro, but Ben will draw off of the Beanstalk from the Force of Will. All right, Sylvan Safekeeper doing its job, chipping in. It's the second point of damage. It's done. Ben gonna draw, finds an Uro again. Actually, I don't know if the Uro was off the top or if it was from the Beanstalk, but he's gonna play Volcanic Island. Probably gonna play the Uro here. Yep, and then we're gonna trigger the Uro, gains 3 life, goes up to 19, undoes everything that Sylvan Safekeeper has done. Off the draw, he draws a Ponder and puts in a Flooded Strand. Now he's gonna sacrifice the Uro. We see Ponder, Terminus, Swords to Plowshare, Force of Will, and Misty Rainforest in Ben's hand. Connors draws Crop Rotation for his turn. Looks like there's double Crop Rotation in his hand. Don't know what the third card is though, but Sylvan Safekeeper doing its trying to carry the game here. Realistically, very challenging to do that as with a 1-mana 1/1. So the life totals should be 18-18. So hopefully we'll get that updated. There we go. Ben gonna draw a third Force of Will for his turn. Going to play a Misty Rainforest and pass. Now we're at the point where we can just hard cast Force of Will. Crop rotations, using the Dryad Arbor, sacking the Dryad Arbor. Ben going to crack the Misty Rainforest to find a tropical island for the second green. Going to crack the second fetch. And I think at this point, you can just grab whatever you want. Oh, this is in response to the fetch. All right, so in response to Ben cracking the Flooded Strand, Connors is Bosejuing the Beanstalk. Does this go through? I think you can Force of Will pitch a Ponder. Oh, it just lets it happen. Okay. Okay, so off of the Boseju, Ben finds the Rafine's Tower, and then off the Flooded Strand, he finds the Tundra. Oh, not the Tundra. Going to be a Savannah instead. So still gonna hardcast Force of Will. Counters the Crop Rotation. Alright, Sylvan Safekeeper comes in again for 1 damage, dropping Ben down to 15. Connor's gonna pass the turn. Ben's gonna draw. It is a 4th Aerlingus! Exclamation point! We're going to exile 5 cards and escape Uro. Alright. Going to Swords to Plowshares the Uro. So Ben will gain 9 points of life. And he didn't find a land, so he doesn't put a land in from Uro. Just gonna pass the turn. Connors has 1 Crop Rotation left in hand that we know of. Sylvan Safekeeper gonna attack, bring Ben down to 23. And Connor's just gonna pass the turn. Ben going to untap, draw. I think it's a Lorien Revealed. It is. It's a foil Lorien's revealed. Draw Uro, Misty, and I think it's another fetch land. Oh no, it's a Leyline Binding. Right? Is that Leyline Binding? Yeah, that's a Leyline Binding. Alright. Finally, Swords to Plowshare, the Sylvan Safekeeper. There's a Swords to Plowshare and Crop Rotation in Connor's hands. So he has just not drawn many threats. Granted, I don't think Connor's threats are incredible. Like, I don't even think they're great against Ben's deck. I will say, like, after playing the Naya Depths matchup, it's very hard to beat the Beanstalk list because they just have so much removal and so much card advantage that to find the removal that they have like almost as much removal as you do threats. So it's pretty rough. All right, Connors will draw for turn. Looks like he used the Witch Teeth to fetch for planes, sacrifice the planes to give the Sylvan Safekeeper hexproof. Looks like we're valuing the Sylvan Safekeeper very highly. So Ben going to fetch for his turn, or fetch at the end of Connor's turn. Finds a Tundra. I think it is time to just start fourth Air Lingussing now. There's a second Swords to Plowshare on it. Going to cast a Crop Rotation, sacrificing Savannah. Force of Will, pitching Ponder. The Swords to Plowshares will resolve. Crop Rotation will get countered. Ben draws a Mystic Sanctuary off the top. He has Force of Will, Lawrence revealed, Swords. Ben opts to put a Force of Will on the top of his library, and down comes a huge fourth Airlingus. So it's for 6. So he's making 6 2/2s. So he's swinging for 12. Brings Connors down to 6. And then because he has dealt damage, he gets to draw off Monarch. Connor's going to draw, and he's going to pack it up. Beanstalk Control takes game 1 over Applejacks. Let's see if Connors can climb back in game 2. Okie dokie, here we are in game 2 of the quarterfinals between Connor's Applejacks and Ben's Beanstalk Control. So we are fighting. Do you want the sweetness of apples, or do you want the fiber-filled beans? So Connor losing game 1 means he is going to be on the play. Going to see there's Pyroblast, Knight of the Reliquary, Dryad Arbor in his hand. Looks like he's going to mulligan. Let's see if Ben is going to just give us a little quick snippet of his hand. Looks like there's a Swords of Plowshares, Dress Down, 4th Aer Lingus. That's all I could really tell from that little glimpse there. But it looks like he is very content with his hand. Alright, let's see what Connors draws for his mulligan to 6. Going to see Veil of Summer, Knight of the Reliquary, Maze of Ith. I think that may be a Yavimaya in there. Not sure exactly what he's pitching and can't really see the end of his hand. There's a Beseiju into Green Suns for 0. Ben just going to let it resolve. Going to grab a Dryad Arbor. Passes the turn. Ben draws Terminus. Floats Tundra to the top of his hand. I think he has a Ponder. I think there's a Ponder third card from the left. But it's definitely a Flooded Strand second or first. Both of them are Flooded Strands. The question is, do we switch to Plowshares this Dryad Arbor? Probably not. I think we're just going to Ponder. Yeah. See, Flooded Strand, Misty Rainforest, the Force of Negation. Not great. I think this might be a shuffle. It's a lot of lands, but if Connors tries to do something cheeky with his lands, like go really, really fast for Dark Depths, if he can. Obviously, showing Beseiju first is not the greatest. Like if it was Yavimaya into Green Sun, get Dryad Arbor, then you're very well positioned because then you can just go Thespian Stage, Dark Depths. Granted, you wouldn't need Dryad Arbor at that point, but you never know what happens. Looks like Ben is going to keep it. He draws a Force of Negation. He does have fetch lands to just... So he can just draw Misty Rainforest and then shuffle away the other Misty Rainforest. Dryad Arbor is going to swing in from Connors, tick down Ben from 20 to 19. We're going to update that life total there. Ben draws the Misty Rainforest that we saw off of the Ponder. Going to play it. And then just pass the turn. So we're going to see if Ben opts to draw the Misty Rainforest or if he's just going to draw it. If Connors is just going to continue to not do anything and just attack in with his Dryad Arbor, then I don't think there's any real reason to shuffle away the Misty Rainforest. But we'll see what Ben wants to do. Use the Sword Step last year, get rid of the Knight of the Reliquary. No lands in the graveyard, so it is just a 2-2. So Connors will go up to 22. Looks like Ben is just going to draw the Misty Rainforest. Not a problem for him. Oh, he's going to crack on the upkeep. Okay, so he doesn't want the Misty Rainforest. Confirmed. Going to find Taiga. Draw for the turn. He draws a Volcanic Island. So Ben just drawing a bunch of lands. This is a consequence of playing the 4-color Beanstalk list. Is sometimes you don't have Beanstalk, and it just becomes just a regular control decks, and regular control decks, sometimes you flood out. But here is a second Knight of the Reliquary from Connors. Does Ben answer it? I don't think he can. He has Force of Negation, 4th Aerlingus, Dress Down, Terminus. Flooded Strand and Volcanic Island are the other 2 cards. Dryad Arbor cracking in for another 1 point of damage. I think Connors might be playing around Daze. Has Ben shown that he's playing Daze? I don't think he is. I would have to double check. Alright, Ben was considering cracking the fetch land at the end of Connor's turn, but does not do it. He wants to just draw for turn. He finds a Plains off of the top. Maybe should have cracked it. Don't really know until you actually draw, so... Ben is in a pretty comfortable position. Like, he's not pressured to answer these right away, although the Knight of the Reliquary can become quite problematic now that the Yavimaya is making the Flagstones of Trocaire a forest. The Knight can just go ahead and sacrifice the Flagstones and find any utility land that he needs, while also retaining the same amount of mana, but he'll actually be going up a mana. So Ben gonna play a Dress Down, draws a island off of the ETB draw. The big thing here is that Knight of the Reliquary cannot activate. So Ben gonna buy just a little bit of time here. There's a Maze of Ith from Connors. Connor's just gonna swing in for 3. Bring Ben down to 14. And then there's a little classic trick. During the end of combat step, before you're out of the combat phase, you can activate Maze of Ith to take the Knight of Reliquary out of combat to kind of give it pseudo vigilance. So that's why the Knight of the Reliquary is currently untapped. For those of you out there, remember, Maze of Ith isn't always dead. You can always take your own Knight of the Reliquary or Elvish Reclaimers out of combat once they've already dealt damage. Ben gonna draw for his turn, finds a Misty Rainforest. Alright, things kind of looking scary here. Connors has an unanswered Knight of the Reliquary that is able to start sacking and tutoring lands and doing his thing. Better yet, he has a Flagstones of Trocaire. So he sacks the Flagstones. When Flagstones is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you can search your deck for any Plains card, put it onto the battlefield tapped. So Knight is going to search for a Thespian Stage. And Flagstone's most likely going to get like a Savannah or a Plateau. Very rarely does he ever get like a basic Plains. Looks like I think he has a Plateau in his hand, but I'm not sure if he plays more than one. He is going for a basic Plains. Very interesting. So this deck looking very much just like Naya Depths rather than Applejacks. I do guarantee you his deck is Applejacks. 100%. Although it may not look like it. Alright. Connor's going to draw for the turn. Plays the Plateau I think he was looking for. There's a Minsk and Boo. Probably going to fire off this Force of Negation. Doesn't really hit a lot in Connor's deck. the premier targets for the Force of Negation are most likely Minsc and Boo and Green Sun Zenith. Just gonna hard cast this Force of Negation. Misty Rainforest is tapping for green because there is a Yavimaya Cradle of Growth on the battlefield. Okay, so Connors is gonna counter the Veil of Summer by playing, or sorry, counter the Force of the Negation with the Veil of Summer. So Mitsukibu becomes uncounterable. It has resolved. We're gonna swing in. The Knight of the Reliquary is a 3/3, and the Boo token is a 4/4. I'm gonna drop Ben down to 6. Do the same trick. We are going to Knight of the Reliquary, or use a Maze of Ith to untap Knight of the Reliquary, and then we're gonna slam down a Sylvan Library. There's finally an Up the Beanstalk for Ben. I think it might be a little too late here. He just went so many turns drawing lands. However, we can hardcast Terminus. There we go. This is a little bit problematic though, because you still have to deal with Minsc and Boo. So at the beginning of the upkeep, you still get another Boo token. So even though you're kind of clearing the board, you're realistically only getting rid of the Knight and the Dryad Arbor. But we're seeing Connors respond to the Terminus by activating Knight of the Reliquary, sacrificing the Dryad Arbor to find a Dark Depth. So now he has Dark Depth's combo with the Thespian stage. And Ben doesn't really have an answer for the combo, as he just has Island, Fetch Land, 4th Aer Lingus, and Up the Beanstalk now. So we're gonna pass to Connors. Connors upkeep, he's gonna generate a Boo. We look at the top 3 cards. It is for Sylvan Library. We see a Pyroblast, Crop Rotation, Wasteland. So it looks like he is keeping everything. Just paid 8. Plays the Wasteland for turn. And I think we are going to try to be making a Merit Lodge here. Connors made the Merit Lodge token and then minus Minscabu to fling it and just immediately deal 20 damage to Ben. So that is Connors making it tied. It is 1-1. Applejacks and Beanstalk Control. Although it is looking very, very much like Naya Depths versus Beanstalk Control. But hopefully we get to see the Orcish Lumberjack come out and do its thing. I'm not sure how powerful it is against Beanstalk Control. There is so much removal in this deck that you should be able to answer anything that is put out by Connors. I do think it is a difficult matchup to navigate because even though you are a lands-based deck, you do rely on your spells quite a bit, so you are still susceptible to the counterspell suite that is in Beanstalk Control. I was actually a little surprised to learn that there's no Solitudes. There's not like the free elemental spells in Ben's list. So I think realistically, there's very few cards that actually take advantage of Beanstalk or Up the Beanstalk. Primarily, it's going to be Lorien Revealed and Force of Will, and the odd 4th Aer Lingus when he gets there. The biggest note here, I think, is that I don't think Ben is playing the One Ring because he's playing Up the Beanstalk. So in these kinds of lists, if you're playing the One Ring, you're usually playing Uro. If you're playing Up the Beanstalk, you're usually using Murktide, but it's kind of flipped here. I don't think we've seen Murktides out of Ben's list so far. And it's probably the preferred method of finisher over the Uro because it triggers Up the Beanstalks. Like that's the sole reason. You don't really want to play Uro and Murktides together because both of them really heavily eat your own graveyard. So if you're going with Uro, or if you've already cast Uro and escaped him, then there's nothing for you to delve with the Murktide Regent. So traditionally, you'll see Uros with the One Ring, and then Murktide Regents with Up the Beanstalk, just because you're complementing each other's strengths. So because Ben lost in that game 2, he's going to be starting off. He mulliganed down to 6. He's going to start with a Tropical Island and pass the turn. Connor's going to respond with Wooded Foothills into Elvish Reclaimer, a very strong start for any lands-based decks. Basically, we're forcing Ben to have a removal spell. If not, we're gonna get one activation at least with the Elvish Mystic. Looks like he is heavy on Force of Wills and a Brainstorm and a Dress Down. I think there's a Dress Down and a 4th Aerlingus in Ben's hand, but he's gonna Brainstorm and draw up the Beanstalk, Misty Rainforest, Ponder, putting 4th Aerlingus on top. And I think it might be one of the Force of Wills. I'm also surprised that Connors has kept crop rotation in against Ben. Traditionally, you don't want to be playing crop rotations against Force of Will decks. Looks like he puts... Oh, what was the card that he put on top? Gonna find a Tundra off the Misty Rainforest. He definitely tucked away the 4th Aerlingus. There's a Ponder. Going to see Mystic Sanctuary. Okay, so Ben shuffled away the Dress Down. So he has Force of Will, up the Beanstalk. Ben going to keep the hand and then draw. Connor's gonna draw for turn. It is a Knight of the Reliquary. Ben drew what looks to be a Leyline Binding. Connor's gonna play Windswept Heath and just pass the turn. Now his Elvish Reclaimer is ready. Ben gonna draw. It is a Misty Rainforest. Down comes Misty, immediately gonna crack it. Find Savannah. There's up the Beanstalk. Again, nothing much you can do with the Naya deck. Then draws a second Beanstalk off of the Beanstalk, enter the battlefield, passing the turn. Connor's gonna crack the Windswept Teeth, and we're gonna see if he's gonna crack the Elvish Reclaimer. Or not crack the Elvish Reclaimer. But essentially turn his one of the lands that he's got into something else. I myself am a fan of finding like a Flagstones. If my opponent is signaling that he can't deal with the Elvish Reclaimer, I'm gonna try to get as much value out of it as possible. It looks like Connors agrees as well. So this is where these kind of land-based decks are really strong against Force of Will decks. A lot of the land tutoring are activated abilities or triggered abilities, and it doesn't really get stopped by the Force of Wills. So a bunch of the cards become really problematic if you can actually stick them onto the board. Here's another Reliquary. I suspect that it's going to eat a Force of Will. It is a Force triggering the Force. This is also debatable because I think if you waited, you could have played the second Beanstalk and then tried to Leyline Binding if you have another fetch land, and he top decks it. So if he allowed the Knight to live, I think Ben would have been like in a fantastic position. It looks like he drew an Earl off of the Beanstalk trigger when he cast the Force of Will. There's a Lorien revealed. So this is a problem of playing Raffine's Tower over Xander's Lounge. Xander's Lounge would have given Ben 2 land types that he didn't have, whereas Raffine's Tower only gives him 1. So Ben is forced to find the red source, and he now has 4 types, so now he has to pay 2 mana for the Leyline Binding. I guess inevitably it's the same, because the Xander's Lounge would have come in tapped anyway, and you're just paying the 1 mana off of the Tundra. Alright, so that was the judge just saying, have your graveyard and your exile zone on the same side, please. Keeping all of the enchantments all together. Connors is deep in the tank on his side after drawing for turn. Alright, what kind of action are we going to be seeing from Connors on this turn? Down comes Dark Depths, so 2 pieces of the puzzle here. If you consider Yavimaya piece of the puzzle, obviously you don't really have to, but it really helps having Dark Depths tap for its own cost for Thespian stage. But we do have half to 1/3 or 2/3 of the combo, so pretty decent shape. Although Ben does have tons of cards in his hand, we know that a couple of them are lands, but Connors does not. Down comes Uro, not going to help the situation here as it will draw Ben 1 card, basically replacing itself. He's going to put in an extra land from the Tropical Island. He's going to cost a Ponder from the card that he drew for the turn. Going to look at Plains, Swords to Plowshare, another Leyline Binding. Looks like we are going to keep it, putting these Swords to Plowshares on the top. I think it is Swords to Plowshare, Leyline Binding, and then Plains on the bottom. Or sorry, not bottom, the third from the top. And it looks like he's just going to pass to Connors. Connor, end step, going to Besage you. Is it the Leyline Binding? I think he's trying to Besage you the Leyline Binding. If this frees his elf, he can then find a Thespian Stage on his own turn. The sad thing about Elvish Reclaimer is that the land does come in tapped, so no matter what he's trying to do, it's going to be like a bit slower. So Ben resolving the Beseiju, going to tap the Tropical Island and the Plains to try to Leyline Binding the Elvish Reclaimer again. Gonna draw 2 cards off the Beanstalks, and we're gonna continue to Connor's turn. Connor's gonna play Plateau, tapping for Minsc and Boo. Looks like it is going to resolve. Looks like there's Swords to Plowshare, Leyline, Binding, Uro, and a Lorien revealed. So I assume that the Boo, or sorry, the Minsc and Boo, the Planeswalker, is gonna get Leyline Binding next turn because you want to keep the Boo at 4. It's pretty low committal removal spell, especially now that for every 1 Leyline Binding that you're casting, you're drawing 2 cards. Alright, so there's 2 mana for the Leyline Binding, 4 mana. Oh, this is the Uro. Alright, so we've escaped Uro, gain 3 life, draw a card, put a land into play. He draws a Terminus, but puts in a Wasteland. Alright, so this Wasteland gonna do major work in stopping the Dark Depths combo if Connors ever tries to go for it. So Bennett is slowly, very slowly locking up and like closing out this game and just having an answer for pretty much anything. Go to pay 2 mana for this Leyline Binding, draw 2 cards, one's a Mystic Sanctuary. Leyline Binding targeting the Minsc and Boo. Then having double Swords to Plowshare, Terminus, Uro, Lorien revealed, Mystic Sanctuary, and a now played Flooded Strand. Gonna pass the turn back to Connors. Connors gonna draw for turn. It is a Maze of Ith. Plays the Maze of Ith. Doesn't stop Uro's attack trigger though, so that is quite problematic. Gonna tap 3 mana here for Knight of the Reliquary. Oh, Prismatic Ending. Prismatic Ending on the Uro. Alrighty. We have solved that problem. Boo gonna come in and smack Ben down to 11. Or is it going to get Swords to Plowshare? I think you can safely Swords this. Connors only has 2 cards in hand. You've already dealt with 1 Knight of the Reliquary and a Minsc and Boo. So the Veil of Summer does not stop Swords to Plowshare, unfortunately. It will only stop a blue and black spells. Wow, Ben is going to fetch. Very interesting. Finds Rafine's Tower. I don't think that's completely necessary. Like, you've already played 2 Leyline Bindings. You've got rid of all of the items that you really need to. Ben draws a Misty Rainforest for the turn. But that fetch line could have just tapped for mana because the Yavimaya is still there. So you could have saved it for like a Brainstorm or something. Ben going to play a Mystic Sanctuary, trigger it because he has multiple islands. He's going to put a Force of Will on the top of his deck. He's going to cast a Lorien Revealed, trigger these 2 Beanstalks to draw 2 cards, and then he'll draw 3 more cards off of the Lorien Revealed. So this is a fantastic rate for Ben because he gets to basically pay 5 mana and draw 5 cards. I think he's drawn several Force of Wills. He's drawn 3 Force of Wills and a bunch of lands. That is a lot of Force of Wills. I think Ben is now considering... Does he either want to play the Uro or does he just want to go to discard? I think he's gone to end step. Connors tried to remove an ice counter, and now Ben is just going to discard down to 7 cards. Discards 2 lands, passes the turn, draws, plays a Dryad Arbor, and just passes back. So now Ben, firmly in the pilot seat, just needs to get this Uro down. Either an Uro or a 4th Aerlingus. I think 4th Aerlingus would be the fastest, but he has just drawn another Uro. Going to draw a card, and then it is another Up the Beanstalk. Play a land for turn. Or no, play the extra land off of the Uro, I think. I think this is where we escape. Alrighty. Go to gain 3 life, draw a card. It is a 4th Air Lingus. I don't think there's another land in Ben's hand. He does have to go to discard. Ben gonna pass a turn. Connors removes an ice counter. Ben gonna discard up the Beanstalk. Connor's gonna draw. It is a wasteland. Well, we don't know if he's drawn a wasteland, or if he had it before. But it's not looking good for Connors. He's not drawing any threats for him to put out onto the board. We do know that he does have a Veil of Summer in the hand. So if he wanted to land something threatening, he does have something to kind of stop one counterspell. But because of the Lorien's Revealed and the double up the Beanstalk, Ben has 3 Force of Wills that Connors needs to fight through. Ben drew Endurance for the turn. I think we can just go for a huge 4th Air Lingus and try to end the game here. Go to draw 2 from up the Beanstalks. Looks like he's just going to make 6. Then you're just gonna Wasteland Dark Depths just to get it out of the way. Oh no. Oh, he's gone for the Maze of It. Ah, that makes sense because of the Uro. So we're just gonna push through damage here. In the top 1, there's a Crop Rotation. I'm gonna sack the Flagstones of Trocaire. Gonna trigger the Flagstones, search for any Plains card. But Ben, we know, has so many Force of Wills that this Crop Rotation will never... Oh, yes. So we are going for the Counter War. So Ben just casting Force of Wills for free, drawing 2 cards each every time. All right. This is pretty much the end of the game, it looks like. No way for Connors to find a Thespian stage. Coming in for 12 damage, dropping Connors down to 10. Yeah, and then the Dried Arbor blocked the Uro. Connors now handless, takes an ice counter off of the Dark Depths. And now Ben, I think, is going to discards 2 Terminus. Now that he has his 4th Air Lingus tokens up. There's a Sylvan Library, and that is the match. Ben takes it over Connors with his Beanstalk Control, conquering Applejacks. Thanks for watching this one, guys. Please turn the notification bell on. I will be making some announcements in the community tab. If you guys are interested in that, just like, follow, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, do all that stuff. Okay, thanks, cool, bye.